Jonathan, thank you again for this time and the opportunity to get to know you and for the difference you've already made in young Carter's life. But before we talk about Carter and before we talk about what happened on Sunday at the Meyerhoff, tell me about yourself. When did you know you had the gift, the talent, and the appreciation for music and conducting that you have now?
Absolutely. So for me, it it goes back to just my roots, my childhood. I grew up in a very, very musical family, but not just musical, very spiritual family as well. Both my parents are pastors. My dad's actually a bishop inside of a Pentecostal church.
Mm-hmm.
And, he but before they were pastors, my mom used to play the piano for our church, and my dad used to direct the choir. And so I was pretty much born in the choir rehearsal, is what I usually say. My first exposure to just music was, watching my parents do their thing, yes, but also just being in church. Gospel music is my foundation. Gospel music is what introduced me to really just what the joy of music was and really what music was in general. And so, musical family, my sister, I have two sisters. They all sing as well. I'm in the middle of three.
Oh.
But they all sing. They're all musical. My older sister is, she's a recording artist. She's well known, but, she's still even becoming more exposed. And my baby sister is in her senior year at Emerson College to pursue a musical theater degree. So
Wow, so it is all in your family, all in your bloodline.
all in the bloodline, but and the same thing for all of us, it all starts with God. It really
Yeah.
all starts with the church. It was instilled in us from our parents. It was instilled in us from our grandparents on both sides, because they also sang. My father's dad had his own gospel quartet group, and then my mother's parents had their own gospel group that they all used to sing in too. So it's really in my blood. My entire family is just musical, but everyone was always rooted in the church. And so that's really where I got that exposure to music. I got that exposure to directing, seeing my dad direct. But my passion and my drive to become a conductor, it's actually pretty silly, but it was from watching Looney Tunes.
Really?
Yeah, there's an episode where Bugs Bunny dressed up as this old-time conductor named Leopold, and he walked out on stage while these musicians were already playing, and they had their own conductor.
Mm-hmm.
He walked out on stage, and as he was walking through the stage, the musicians were stopping, and they were like, Leopold, Leopold, Leopold. And Bugs Bunny got up on the podium, and he made a fool out of conducting, yes. But seeing Bugs Bunny, who, as a little kid, Bugs Bunny was just somebody that I admired at that time. Seeing Bugs Bunny made me want to be a conductor. And so here I am. I was maybe about 5 or 6, maybe even younger, 5 or 6 years old. I would take, chopsticks from my Chinese takeout or one of my mom's crocheting needles or something like that.
Uh-huh.
Conduct my imaginary orchestra. I would blast music throughout the house. I might make music up in my head, and I would stand in front of our stairwell like I had a big stage, and I would just wave my arms or stand in front of a mirror
Mm-hmm.
and arms, because I knew that was something that I wanted to do. And you found me watching videos of conductors and studying conducting. I remember I went online and looked up what conducting was, and I saw that, conductors use patterns. And so I went online to look up conducting patterns, and that's how I found out all this stuff. And I remember even when I was a kid, I used to act like I was a conducting teacher.
Uh-huh.
And I would use a dry erase marker and draw the conducting patterns on my mirror, and I would get in a lot of trouble, but I would draw the conducting patterns on my mirror and act like I was teaching a class on how to conduct. It was just,
Oh my goodness.
so just enamored by it. I had to do it. I had to be a part of it. And so it was, and believe it or not, yes, I think part of that came from, watching my father direct gospel choirs.
Yeah.
It really sparked and manifested in my mind when I saw Bugs Bunny do it, and then I knew that I had to do it.
Well, I'm telling you that this might be a first where
Right.
someone will say that Bugs Bunny, the Bugs Bunny, the Reverend Dr. Bugs Bunny was
Right.
was their inspiration. I think that is adorable, and I'm sure there are a lot of kids who might say, something similar about how they were inspired to go after something that they dreamed of. It may have been from the most unlikely place. Now, once you realized that, this is something that you wanted to pursue, and you were, drawing on mirrors and getting in trouble, what role did your parents play in making sure that you had a path that was shaped and molded to help you pursue this as a career?
Absolutely. So not only did they make me join the church choir, I wanted to. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they put me in the choir, put me on the worship team, all those types of things. But then they signed me up to participate in band. I remember we had our, I believe it was our local high school came to my elementary school, mm-hmm. and they gave us a sign-up sheet and said, circle which instrument that you want to play. And I remember a family friend of mine had always played the saxophone, and I saw it, and I'm like, that's the instrument I want to play. So I remember circling it and bringing it back to my parents, mm-hmm. because they knew we were going to do music some way, shape, or form. And so they were like, yeah, absolutely. So they signed me up for band. And so then I started playing the saxophone, which is how I learned how to read music. We had a person at our church who taught piano lessons. She went and started teaching me piano lessons. My parents, they just signed me up for everything they could musically. Mm-hmm. And one thing I appreciate about them, too, is that they always instilled in us an appreciation for music, all types of music. So it wasn't just gospel music that you heard in our household. Mm-hmm. You heard country, you heard jazz, you heard rock and roll, you heard a lot of soul music, a lot of Earth, Wind, and Fire. Whew. But then you also heard classical every now and then. You heard musical theater works. You heard everything. We were so well-rounded and well-versed in just music because my parents loved it all, and they wanted to make sure that we loved it all. And part of them, part of ensuring that was to sign us up for whatever we wanted to do, whether it be musically or whether it not be musically. Now, granted, we all signed up to do something musically, but they were right there, making sure that if they mm-hmm. couldn't come, they had to preach or something for a concert, they made sure somebody from the family was there. They made sure that they were at least a part of it. They made sure we always got there. They played such a huge role in just instilling this musical tradition of our family, if you will, inside of our hearts, and right. Nothing forced. Right. It was always just.
It was there, and they helped. They helped you keep it there. And it sounds like also, and this is, I think, really important for all parents or those adults involved with children and helping develop them, to instill the discipline of that which you like. Because, kids will like all sorts of things and have a passion for things, but then there's a discipline that comes along with it. So having you go to and take classes and join the choir and do things like that, that's also, I'm sure, helped instill a discipline in pursuit of your craft that you had.
Oh, absolutely. A strong discipline. And let me tell you, I remember when I first took piano lessons, I quit because I was like, whoa, this is too much.
Too much.
And, I even signed up for violin. That's what I forgot to say. I signed up for violin in first grade, and I didn't like it. And so I'm like, oh my gosh. But I still knew I wanted to do music, but the discipline part was hard for me to or at least to get used to. But then once I started to really do it, I started to learn, well, if this is something that I wanted to do, if I want to be, Bugs Bunny one day, then I actually have to take this seriously.
Right. Before you can end up being Looney Tune-ish, you have to take it seriously. Now, let me ask you this. So as you got older and started taking these lessons and developed what I'm assuming was even an affinity for classical music in particular, were you seeing outside of your church and family many other Black children appreciating the same things?
Here we go.
Yes. No, let's go here.
When I was around, as I got older, the simple answer is no, I did not. Mm-hmm. There was no type of representation. Actually, as a matter of fact, and I did notice this at a young age, and then even as I got older, and we can get more into this later too, I started to realize I started to feel like almost as if I could not pursue those dreams or pursue the dreams of becoming a conductor because I saw nobody like me doing it. Everybody in my school, yes, there were some people of color in band or in choir, but no one was taking it seriously. Everybody else wanted to play sports or do something else. I wanted to do music, and I felt like I didn't have the friends who wanted to do it with me. I felt like I didn't have, the community of people who actually understood it. And so I felt alone. And so I'm like, I feel alone pursuing this. I don't see anybody who looks like me in this craft. So maybe this is something that I actually can't achieve.
Wow. Wow. Stay there for a minute, Jonathan, because that in itself is sort of the essence of this story, this article that we want to our Afro audience to read is how there is such a lack of representation in all arenas, but in particular in the arts, in the classical music arena. And so you felt alone, you felt isolated, even consider, well, maybe this is not my path, but what made you stick with it?
What really made me stick with this was just it was a simple fact that I loved it so much. But then also I had, and this might get very spiritual again, but like I've always had this dream. Anytime I would, imagine myself conducting an audience or conducting an orchestra, or anytime I would be teaching those conducting classes from my mirror, anytime I would always have this vision. That's what it was, not a dream, it was a vision.
Yeah.
I can literally see myself doing all of this.
Wow.
And vision alone was what drove me. And that's what kept me going, because I'm like, okay, I can't do it, but I still see it. And I'm like, because I still see it, I still have to pursue. And after I look back on it, even today, I'm like, wow, that was just God showing me what I'm supposed to be doing. But at that moment, I didn't know what it was. I just knew it was this thing that I saw that I pictured myself doing that I wanted to make a reality. And that's what kept me going. But like I said, it wasn't always easy, and it wasn't always simple. It wasn't always a straight shot down a path. Because by the time I got into college, I knew that this is what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be a conductor. But in the music world, you can't study to become a conductor until you're pursuing a master's degree. You have to have a bachelor's degree in some form of music, whether it be music education, whether it be a performer, things of that sort. And so and that made me upset, because I was like, I want to start now. But I remember, getting into school, and I went for music education to be a music teacher, because I knew that's how I could at least get close to conducting. Yeah. Because my music teacher conducted our band, so I'm like, okay, I can still conduct as a music teacher.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. And so I studied music education, and when I got to school, I still had this passion to be a conductor. Saw the conducting professor at my school, and I asked him, so what do I have to do to become a conductor? I see you doing this. I see you're successful. Mm-hmm. What do I have to do? And he made a strong suggestion that I just stay in the field of education, because I'll be more successful there. And there's nothing wrong with education, but someone was knocking down my dream.
Yeah.
Then I had a family friend who was in the music world. She was an organist, and I talked to her saying I want to become a conductor. And she was scared and told me, no, I need to stay in gospel and jazz, because that's where they don't want to see me as a conductor. They just want to see me in this field. That's where I'll be successful. So that's number two. And then third time's the charm. I go back to school, and there's now the orchestra conductor at our school. And he was offering undergraduate students private conducting lessons, independent study in conducting. And I said, okay, this is finally my chance. And this is an old white man, by the way. Like, it's finally my chance. And he was a really good conductor. So I go up to him, and I'm like, hey, I heard you're offering this class. I know some of my friends who are in it. I want to be a conductor. I've always wanted to be a conductor. How do I sign up for your class? Can I do it? And he literally looked me up and down and said, no, and turned around and walked away.
Wait a minute. Okay, first of all, let me ask you this. Were you were still an undergrad at the time?
Yes.
Okay, so what, your sophomore year, junior year, where were you in your process?
This would have been So the first no came my freshman year, but the second two no's came in my sophomore year.
And that last one being, or the one you just mentioned, being from someone who was himself already a conductor.
Yes.
Offering classes to whoever wanted to attend.
Mm-hmm.
You ask him, can you be in his class? You tell him you're interested in being in his class, and he gave you the look up and down.
Yep.
As he concluded that you didn't fit the type.
Pretty much.
And he said no and walked away?
Walked away. And then I found out he later referred to me as the boy with the earrings.
The boy with the earrings. Wow. And so tell me if you can remember, clearly you've recovered and gone on to do great things. So hopefully he's around to, hear na 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 na. But tell me what you felt in that moment. Do you remember?
I do. Because I tell the story quite often to other students too, but I remember exactly where I was. I felt so defeated because it's like everything was racking up and it finally hit the last straw. Mm-hmm. I saw Bugs Bunny conduct, not anybody who looked like me. That was my inspiration, Bugs Bunny, not anyone who looked like me. I didn't have any friends who were inside of, classical music or interested in classical music. Mm-hmm. I didn't have that support system. And now here I am in college, and people, professors, family friends, and now this orchestra conductor is telling me no. So I just kept feeling like I wouldn't do it. I kept feeling like I didn't have access to it. And then those 3 no's really just let me know that this is just not going to happen. And so I was discouraged, and I'm going to tell you something. I actually stopped trying to pursue the dream. I was still in music. I was still going to go and become a music teacher, but I was like, okay, maybe just, this conducting thing is not a reality. But God really has an interesting way of doing things. Yeah, after that moment, it wasn't too long after that, actually. I remember getting a call letting me know that one of my friends was killed in a car accident. Mm. And I remember running. I remember I was at work and I had to run to my dorm. I was crying. It was horrible. And I remember going to the funeral, and it was such a sad moment. But in that, it reminded me, because it will remind me that tomorrow's not promised. Mm-hmm. Anything. And I'm like, I'd rather, if I was to die now, I'd rather die trying to pursue my dreams than letting some people who don't know me, who can't really see me, who haven't seen those visions, to let people who haven't seen that shut me out of it.
Amen.
It's really a wake-up call for me. It really was. And like I said, God is so intentional about so many things. I'm not saying that was the reason why my friend had to go. No, but after that, I remember going back to school. And there was another friend of mine who's actually who's a pretty well-known conductor. Mm-hmm. Another friend of mine, he was also interested in conducting, a black man. Mm-hmm. And he had a similar story where people told him no, and so he did something about it and started his own orchestra at the school. Mm. And it was full of students who didn't major in music, but people who played their instrument in high school and just wanted to still have an opportunity to play in college. And so he started this group, and my sophomore year in college happened to be his senior year. And he was on his way out, and he found out about my passion, and he said, hey, why don't you come by to one of our rehearsals? I went. He let me work with the group a couple of times. He's like, hey, you can be my assistant conductor. I'm like, okay, great, cool. And so I'm still not doing it, but I'm like, okay, this is kind of weird how this happens. Uh-huh. And he ends up, having to graduate. They need to they need to get a new music director. And he put my name in, the orchestra voted, and they voted that I become their next music director. So in all those years, in those 2 years of me getting rejection and people telling me no, and then even a friend dying in that same year, I lose that spark, and the moment happens with my friend.
Yeah.
The spark comes back. I start to see that vision again of still leading. Start again, and as I start to see it and make this decision to pursue it, I kid you not, and this has happened so many times in my career now. Mm-hmm. So the next day, almost the next day, it felt like at least, that's when the door opened again. And then my friend graduates, I take over this group, and then I'm able to use this group to record videos, because that's how you audition for grad school conducting, to record videos of me conducting the ensemble, sent it out to schools, all of them great schools. When I did that, some professors even told me that I'm shooting too high.
Wow.
But all of them great schools, and it was only 3 schools I applied to, 3 of the top conducting schools. 2 of them rejected me, and the school that I thought would be the last one to ever accept me was the one that invited me to audition live, which was the Peabody Institute.
Oh.
Yeah. And so, and I got to study. Well, I went there for the audition. I got to audition for Maren Alsop, who at the time was the music director of the Baltimore Symphony. And she invited me to study with her at Peabody. And ever since then, literally my life had changed. Maren helped connect me with this group in Chicago titled the Chicago Sinfonietta, an orchestra that was founded by a Black man, Paul Freeman, but also the most diverse orchestra in the country.
Wow. What ethnicity is Maren?
Maren is a white woman, but she's the first female to ever lead a major American orchestra. And so she's had her own battle. She also had to fight just from being a woman, in the conducting field, because all we knew was old white men.
Right.
Right. And so, she was really the first in so many different ways, and, especially in the world of conducting. And so just the fact that I was even connected to her, she had to go through her own trials, and I had to go through mine too. There was something that brought us together and connected us. And, still to this day, I mean, that was years ago, but now to this day, I was just texting her a couple of days ago. We're still very well connected. But ever since then, I got connected to that group in Chicago, the Chicago Sinfonietta. And I was their assistant conductor for a year. And then in that year as the assistant conductor at Chicago Sinfonietta, I got a call from the Baltimore Symphony asking me if I was available to do a performance that they're going to do. It's a free performance that they're doing in the city, and they were going to do at Morgan State University. And I was like, oh.
Where were you living at this time?
So so I'm jumping around now. So at this time, I was living so when I was working in Chicago, I was still living in Connecticut, which is where I'm from.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm getting to all this stuff. I'm originally from Windsor, Connecticut. That's my hometown. That's where I grew up. That's where my family still lives.
Right.
And so I was still living in Connecticut at this time, traveling back and forth to Chicago. And then the Baltimore Symphony calls me, and they had knew of me because of my studies at Peabody in Baltimore.
Sure.
But and with my teacher was their music director, so they knew who I was, and they called me to lead this performance. This performance got amazing reviews. And
what year was that, Jonathan?
Oh yes, this is a very important part of the story too. That performance, it was in February of 2020.
Oh my.
Yep. And so I had that performance. The rehearsal went phenomenally well. The performance went phenomenally well. And the musicians loved it. And they told me, they're like, hey, listen, we're having an assistant conductor audition. And after that performance, we would love to have you audition with us. And I'm like, wow.
Wow.
Okay. So they set the audition up and sorry if I'm talking so long, but it's so
No. This is the reason why I'm recording this. I'll be able to go back and know this is great. You're doing wonderfully well. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So they had set the audition up to be in June of 2020, but then we all know what happened in March of 2020.
Right.
COVID. And so I'm like, oh my gosh. I was so close. I finally got to conduct the Baltimore Symphony, which was already a dream. Now they want me to be their assistant conductor. They set an audition, and now I can't even do it because of the pandemic. And I'm like, God, what are you doing?
Oh my goodness. You're so close. I'm so close. Yes.
So close, and got shut down. I'm like, what? Well, then orchestras, everybody was shut down for months. They weren't even playing. But then orchestras were coming up with a new plan for their new season, for the next season, which would have started in September of 2020.
Right.
They're like, okay, we still have to get the music out there some way, somehow. And so they did. They shut down the concert hall so people couldn't come in. But the orchestra, as long as they were socially distant and wore masks, could play on stage in small groups. And those concerts would be recorded and then brought out to people so they can see them digitally.
Wow.
And the BSO hopped onto that bandwagon, and they installed new cameras inside their hall, record the orchestra virtually, but they had their former associate conductor. He was there still, but he was supposed to be out because, they're going to have an audition, but they had him hold on for another year, and they said they need 2 conductors to help lead this. And so I remember they had him, but I remember in late July of 2020, I got another call from the Baltimore Symphony. And I was like, hi, and they were talking to me, and they said, so we just want to go back to this performance we had in February, because we know we had to cancel the audition due to the pandemic, but the orchestra loved you so much. We were so moved by your performance that rather than audition, we want to just invite you to become our assistant conductor.
Oh, my goodness. You didn't even have to audition. I
didn't even have to audition. And that's what you call God's favor.
I mean, all the way. But isn't it something how God's favor shows up just when we think, oh, my goodness. Now, just when we think that our hopes are dashed or our vision is not going to come to pass, God shows up and said, oh, wait a minute. I've got another plan. And that's amazing. And so that was also in 2020 then.
That was in 2020. So that would have been when I started. And so that was that season, everything. I was conducting almost every single week, which is unheard of for an assistant conductor. Had this been a regular year, I would have probably done the holiday spectacular like I did now, but actually probably not. I take that back.
Oh.
Been a regular year, I would have just been, a backup conductor, and I would have, any conductors that we would have come to lead the orchestra, I would just be there, assisting them to make sure everything sounds right. But I probably wouldn't have had many concerts with the orchestra. But because it's happened in the year of the pandemic and they needed conductors, now from going from a job where I probably would have conducted 4 times out the year, I conducted every single week.
Wow. And look at that. As a result of what could very well be considered one of the worst things to happen in terms of health, a national or global health concern, in the midst of that resulted in a blessing for you.
And a blessing for me, right?
Wow!
I'm telling you.
You have an amazing story that is still unfolding because you're so young. Can I ask how old you were?
Yeah, I'm 27.
27. I figured you were in your 20s, but wow. Yeah. I mean, you're so young, and so much of your story is yet to be written. And so I want to go back to the whole representation and how, again, you just didn't see much or any of it until you got connected with this multicultural, diverse, was it orchestra? Yeah. And so, but you stayed with it, thankfully, and thanks all of us. We thank you. And so now that you are in the position that you're in, what would you say to kids like Carter, to other children who may not even be exposed as much as Carter has been? What would you say to kids about having this hope, having this vision, wanting to get into classical music, but just not seeing a path forward?
What I would say, and what I do say, what I'm still saying, is, and it sounds so cliche, but it's so true, is that, number one, your dreams are absolutely achievable. But they're only achievable if you're willing to actually see them and pursue them. You can't pursue something that you give up on, right? And so, anytime that you have a dream, anytime that you have a goal, anytime that there's something that you want to do, anytime somebody else might try to say no, you might get pushback. There's going to be obstacles. And you only achieve your dreams by beating those obstacles, pushing through those obstacles. So you keep pushing forward, even though there's pushback. You push anyway. Even if the wall seems impossible to push, it's all in your trying. When you try and you keep trying, even though it seems like you don't have the strength to do it, there's going to be an opening somewhere. Just in that persistence.
And pushing back and pushing past, as you did, the no. You got to push past the no.
Right.
The first, second, third, fourth, however many yet, just keep pushing past them. So let's talk about what happened on Sunday and how you felt, what came over you when you walked out into the lobby at the Meyerhoff the afternoon of the Holiday Spectacular, and you see this young man conducting with coffee stirrer sticks, by the way, that we went and got from the coffee bar that was in the lobby. He just went and got 2 sticks, and that's what he was conducting with. So you walk out into the lobby and you see this and you think what?
I walk out in the lobby, I see this, and I'm like, who is that over there? And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I couldn't do anything but laugh because I literally saw myself at a younger age, but I saw myself doing something that I never had the opportunity to do at that age. Carter's 8 years old. And so I'm looking and I'm like, that's exactly how I looked. That's exactly something that I would do.
Yes.
Except now he's getting the opportunity to do it in front of a group.
In front of an audience.
and with an audience. I'm like, what? Who is this kid? I'm jealous now. I see him and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I just see his joy and I see his passion. And he just was so comfortable and confident. And I'm like, this kid gets it. I have to go meet him. I have to meet him. Yeah. And so I go over there, and that's when I run into you, and we talk, and you tell me about, how he loves orchestras and how he looks at the conductors and all this stuff. And I'm like, yes, that was me. I did the same thing. I'm like, yes. And so I'm just like in awe. And immediately, I knew I knew something had to be done, and I knew something had to be done, and I knew I wanted him to know that, because at that age I knew people didn't see me, but I wanted him to know that we saw him. I wanted him to know. I wanted him to feel so supported in this that he didn't have a doubt in his mind that he could never do it. And so I'm like, something has to be done. And that's when God told me, give him your baton.
Oh my goodness. So wait a minute, because again, I want to just rest on that point for a minute, because it's one thing, and I'm sure, many of us have done this, when you see something and you have such an appreciation for it, and you get this, this warm feeling in your heart about the beauty of what you're seeing. So that's one thing. And that in many cases would have been the end of it. You'd have been like, "Aw, that's sweet. That is beautiful." You may have posted about it. Who knows? But for you to then take action, and I love what you said, that you wanted him to know that he had been seen, that you saw him, and you knew that something had to be done. And so what was that something? You did what?
I had to give him a baton, because me giving, and there's like this thing too, it's a funny thing, whenever a conductor gives another conductor their job or something, they call it passing the baton.
Yes, passing the baton. We've adopted that cliche outside of the music industry.
Right, exactly. And so I'm like, or even just like, a relay race.
Yeah.
And so here I am. That was significant in me passing
Ah,
the baton. Like, I was the kid that people knew who conducted orchestras and made them up in his head. And now I see him, and I saw him doing it and taking it to the next level. And so I'm like, that's your job now. This is you.
oh my goodness, you'll make me cry even now. Oh my goodness.
No, I'm just saying. And I mean, that's why I got so teary-eyed in that moment too, because I'm like, wow. I was just like so amazed.
You literally and figuratively passed the baton.
Yes, exactly. And me in my position, and not to talk high of myself, but I'm in a much better position than any of those professors who told me no were.
Yes.
Anybody who told me no were. And so I'm like, I know where I am now. And me doing this is confirmation, it's affirmation to let you know. If anybody tells you that you can't do it, this is now the moment where I'm telling you, and you hold on to this, always remember this, I'm telling you that you can. And this has always been part of my artistic mission. And I wrote this down, but this is my artistic mission. And it's to inspire a younger generation of creators, yes, but more specifically musicians who look like me.
Yeah.
To pursue their dreams. I had said before, my only representation was Bugs Bunny. That was the only thing I could connect to. And, while it's funny, I also look at it and I'm like, that's kind of sad.
You're right. You're right. You're not even like a real person, an animated character. That's all you had.
And the sad thing is, there have been Black conductors out. We just don't know about them. I know about them now.
Right.
But I didn't know they existed. You couldn't find anything about them.
Yeah.
Especially at that young age. And so
wow. So there's that.
My goal now was to be the Bugs Bunny for a kid like that. I want them to see me to be an actual literal representation, a person that they can see. And so whenever somebody says, no, you can't do that, they can say, no. Jonathan Rush is a conductor. Jonathan Rush does this.
That's right.
I want to be able to do it.
Yes, Jonathan Rush was told no, and look where he is now. Exactly. Jonathan, you mentioned before we started recording, so I would ask you to mention again about that baton and how long had you had it and what were you going to do with it? So talk about the baton itself that you gave to Carter.
So the baton I gave Carter, I probably had it right now, probably about, I think, 5 years. It was trying to remember, it's such a while ago now because I've had batons and I've broken them and done so many things with them. But I remember it being a special baton, the baton I held on to, because a lot of times, most batons you'll see are made out of plexiglass or just plastic. Oh. But, this was a wooden baton. And those are the most fragile, yet beautiful batons. Even the one I use now is wooden. But that was a wooden baton. And I found out about wooden batons, actually, because of my teacher, Marin, also. She also has a wooden baton. And so I'm like, well, I want a wooden baton. And now, don't get me wrong, because there are some wooden batons that you can get off Amazon. They're painted white, but they break easy, and it's very, very cheap wood that they use. Yeah. But a lot of batons, some of them are made out of oak, or they're very strong. And so this is one of them, and got this wooden baton, and I held on to it for a while. I couldn't use it because it was a little too small for me. Yeah. And throughout my life, I've seen younger kids, other people conduct. And, I've just said, oh, they would love a baton, because I always wanted a baton. So I'm like, yeah, I would want to give them the baton. But every time I thought about it, something would always kind of hold me back. And I'd be like, no, I'll be good. Not right now. I need to keep it. Maybe something will happen. I don't know. Wow. I was going to give it away. And then until this moment, that's when I finally knew why I was saving it.
So when you said to me, because you identified me as the person that this child was with. And so when you said to me, hold on, I have something for you, you knew in that moment that you were going to go and get that baton.
Yes, I did. I knew exactly where it was and exactly what I was grabbing.
Wow. And the response, you saw it. Our readers will see it because we're going to post that video. I recorded it as well. That which, if nothing else, showed you, Jonathan, that you are accomplishing exactly what you stated in your mission. If nothing else, and there will be plenty others who you will impact as well, but I hope you never forget the impact you had on this child.
Oh my gosh, I don't think I ever will. I really don't, because while I've gone to schools, speaking to kids, telling them about what I do, I've done this so many times and inspired so many generations, so many people. I'm like, yes, I'll say, that's part of that artistic mission. But this is really the first time that I saw it come into fruition. And I'm like, wow. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more, something that made this day even more significant.
Okay.
Earlier that day, I was actually praying. And, I do like to pray every day, but I was really, going to town, just praying about, things that are happening inside the world, yes. But finally, I got a revelation of just the work that I do, because a lot of people come to concerts, and when they come, they're so burdened. They come with so many weights.
Yes.
Some people come depressed, angry, sad, with chaos in their lives.
Yeah.
But then they leave with joy or peace. They feel better about themselves or about life. And so I realized that while that might happen naturally, I know why God has placed me specifically in this field, because now it's not just it's deeper than just being happy. It's deeper than just there being peace. When people come to concerts that I conduct, there's actually a spiritual transformation happening.
Oh, wait a minute. Now you better stop and preach right now. Listen, oh my God. And that right there, Jonathan, and what I'm really glad about, and please don't lose your train of thought, but I have to jump on that.
Oh yeah.
What I'm really glad about, Jonathan, is that you have recognized this at your age. Because I'm much your senior, and I wish I had known and appreciated the value of my anointing at a younger age. Because once you recognize that you could be doing the exact same thing and in the exact same way as someone else, but because it's you doing it,
right,
and because of the grace and the anointing and the oil on your life, you will break chains. That other person can be doing it exactly the same way, but it's the vessel that makes the difference. And it's the anointing on your life. And for you to recognize that when people come, not just to the BSO, not just to a holiday concert, but to yours, and you're conducting, there's a transferring of deliverance and freedom and joy and peace. See, you're going to make me get up and run around. I preach myself, so, if you haven't figured that out. And so, wow, Jonathan, that's huge.
Oh, yeah.
That is huge. Okay, so now you're...
we'll go back in a second. Just to add on to that, though. It wasn't always like this, especially for me, because I'm young, and even a lot of my friends aren't even at this place now. But God's definitely, I had a really big transformation happen to me just spiritually, years ago, where I've had to walk into callings where I've walked into accepted callings. I remember being in my room, breaking down, crying in the middle of the night, and the Holy Spirit just speaking to me, and I broke out in tongues, and everything was happening.
Yes.
And I'm like, golly, what? And that was a turning point. Um,
Wow.
and, because I had always been saved, I've always been in church, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's always been in my life, but this is the first time that I actually had like a true encounter. This is years ago. And ever since then, something shifted to now, that's all, all I try to do in everything is reveal Jesus. All I try to do is
Yes.
God, right?
Yes.
And I know I'm different amongst my peers, but that's something that I've accepted. And even my wife, similar thing happened to her around the same time, and we weren't together then.
Wow.
But once that happened, we found each other.
So go back to, you're going in, you're in prayer, and are you asking God about something specific for that day, or just praying in general about your ministry? Because what you do is ministry. And so,
right, exactly.
Yeah.
So I was praying for what I do in ministry, but then I started praying for this day. And I was praying that, those chains would be broken. I was praying that lives would be changed. People would be transformed for this concert, because I was realizing, what this ministry really was. Mm-hmm. But I was also praying that God just, in that I was praying in me praying for him to transform lives.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just for people who came to the concert, but like I prayed that people would also be inspired by what happened.
Yes.
And I was praying so hard, and I just knew something would happen that day, because you can sense and feel it.
Yes.
I knew something would happen, but I didn't know what it was going to be. I had this new energy. I'm like, oh, this is going to be a great concert. It's going to be a great experience. I'm like, wow, I just feel great about this. I'm like, this is going to be fantastic. And then I'm backstage and I'm getting things together. I'm like, oh, you know what? Let me go out front and check on the students, and go out there, and then I just see Carter, and everything made sense.
Oh my goodness. And so not only did you inspire a child, and that you have done before and you will do again, but you inspired that child.
Yeah.
That child who God's hand has been on. He was 3 and asked for a pulpit for Christmas.
Oh, Lord.
And still's asking for one. And so, and will build his own if you don't get one. He'll find some things that he can stack up and put a Bible on, and he will start preaching sermons to himself.
Listen, oh my God.
Yeah. So God made that connection, not just with any child with you, it was with that child.
It was with Carter, yeah. And I was so specific. And I mean, I just don't find it strange that, he had connected us, because I'm telling you, I see myself so much, not just musically, but even spiritually, because I've always had a similar type of favor like that.
Yes.
But I was also that kid who would dress up in bed sheets like I had on a church robe, and I was preaching. And I was like, preaching to an invisible crowd, It's always been there, and it's there now. I mean, now, granted, I do preach for real now. I'm a minister now.
Amen.
He's elevating me, but the good thing is, it's just like I don't find it strange, that now of all moments, now of all times, I run into Carter, I meet him, I see him do something that I've always been passionate about.
Yes.
I mean, it's.
And to find out that in more ways than just musically, you are like connected, like you are, like you said, you look at him and it's you. He does the same thing, a sheet, whatever he can find that can look like it could be either a choir rope so he can conduct, the choir. Cause he ain't gonna let us tell him what to do. He'll let us know when to come in. So either that, so it's like, wow, God just really divinely connected you to someone who you were and who you still are as an adult, but who you were as a child. And so how did, after you made that, after you literally passed the baton, you clearly walked away from that moment with Carter in your heart, on your mind, because then you proceeded to call him out and and dedicate a song to him. So tell me about that. Like, what were you thinking? Like, okay, I'm going to do this. How did that all even come about for
Oh my
you?
gosh. I went backstage and I told that I was raving. I was telling everybody, and I had a little video on my phone. I'm like, look at this kid. Oh, like, just look at him. He's so adorable. He's so great. He's so mature and talented. I'm just going. I was going crazy backstage, and I was like, oh, we have to do something. And because I was just thinking in my head, I'm like, what would I have wanted in that moment? What would have been that much more powerful? And now, granted, I'm going to tell you what the original plan was, but then I couldn't do it because of there are like rules that the orchestra has to follow due to the union and things like
Sure.
that. But I was like, if only that didn't exist. But I was actually planning on we called the ticket office from backstage.
Yeah.
Your ticket to get where you were seated inside the hall. So I can know exactly where your tickets were.
Yeah.
And we were actually going to come find you all before the concert started. I was going to have somebody from the artistic staff find you all to let you know that I was going to bring Carter up to conduct the orchestra.
Oh my God.
I was literally like, I was trying to make it happen, and I was going to have him conduct Sleigh Ride. He would have been up there with me. We would have been conducting the orchestra together. But due to orchestra rules in their union, we couldn't do it that last minute. So I was like, oh, man.
Oh, right.
And so I was like, what's the next best thing that I can do?
Yes.
And I'm like, well, I'm going to let the whole audience know who Carter is, and I'm going to dedicate this piece to him.
Oh, my goodness.
It was almost a sold-out show. So,
we noticed because, again, we went last year and, we were, I guess, just coming out of the pandemic. Right. And I'm like, what a difference in the crowd.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was. Well, let me just tell you something. Even before the show started, because he had a lot of people witness his conducting out in the lobby. But then after you did that and during intermission and after the show, people were seeking us out. They wanted to take pictures with him. And these weren't people that look like you and me, okay? Because there are a whole bunch of us in there. But they were seeking him out. This one woman said to him, she said, I just want to be able to say I have a picture of you so that when you are famous and worldwide, I can show people, oh, I met him back at the Meyerhoff. I mean, this is the kind of stuff people were saying to him.
Oh, yeah.
So, of course, we're riding home and he's like, am I famous? I'm like, just for the day, all right? Because tomorrow I'll be plucking you for doing something.
Oh, goodness, that's so funny. And then I heard, just a quick side note, his music teacher was inside the choir.
Yes! Miss Timmons.
Messaged me yesterday, let me know that he took his baton to school and was showing all his friends. And he was just raving about just what happened on Sunday.
Oh, I imagine he didn't even sleep that night. And so his mother is going to put that baton in a very special place. He's not able to use it every day because we want it to be preserved. And we're actually going to get him another one that he can use and play, and have his conducting with, so he doesn't at least have to use coffee stirrers. But the one that you gave him will be put up in a special place. Good.
I love that.
Yes.
I think that's awesome. That actually happened to me the first time someone gave me a baton. I don't use it. It's in a very special place in a case. I just leave it there to remind me.
Yes, that's right. To remind you. And like I said to Carter, and like you do, I said there will be a day where you will be able to pass the baton to another child.